Welcome, listeners. Today, we're going to welcome back our very first guest on Future Secured, Dan Maslin, Group Chief Information Security Officer at Monash University. Dan leads the cybersecurity strategy across one of Australia's largest and most complex university environments. Monash is a national research leader with a global footprint, which means protecting everything from student data to high-value research. Dan has long championed a resilience-first approach to cyber leadership. He's also one of the few CISOs who openly talks about the mental load and pressure of running security teams in high-stakes environments. In today's episode, we'll talk about what's changed since Dan first joined us on the show, the evolution of his approach to leading teams under stress, and why Bitcoin might just be edging closer to mainstream legitimacy. So thank you, as always, joining me, my co-host Jason. Thank you for joining us, Dan, and over to you, Jason, for our first question.
Thanks, Tommy. Yeah, so we've had another 40 episodes in between. It's obviously over a year, I think, since we would have done our first one. But
Yep.
and then I was thinking, because I did post something a month or two back just about our Bitcoin series that we did many moons ago when it was, what was that? Probably 4 years ago,
Yeah, I
when
think
we started talking about that. So
I saw a video pop up the other day, and I reckon we were in lockdown, Jason, because we had terrible
yeah,
haircuts, terrible beards, the
yeah.
whole lot. So it's
Yeah.
probably a good 4 years ago. Yeah.
I've always been terrible. You're also looking a lot fitter. So Dan's also got me into doing the F45 as well, which is making a difference as well. So we might be able to throw a bit of health in there as well. So we can cover everything. This could be a
Yeah,
five-parter, this
you
one.
definitely
Uh,
can't do F45 without telling everyone about it, Jason. So well done.
that's exactly right. Well, I've seen your pictures. I've seen your pictures with the guns out. Like when you've been doing like your 5,000th workout and stuff like that. So it's something to aspire to. I'm still well short of that. Only a bit of over a month into it, but yeah. And I think you've got some hopefully some announcements or some things you can sort of talk about as well, because there's been a lot of changes. Sort of in that time. I think as we sit here today too, obviously from a geopolitical standpoint, there's been a few variances, a few differences with Trump going in and a lot of the issues around the world. So we've got plenty of places we can go, but yeah, give us a bit of a rundown on the last sort of 12 months and a bit, and anything else you want to sort of talk off the top, and we'll dig in from there.
Yeah, thanks, Jason, and thanks, Tom, for having me back. I think it's been a good 12, 15 months, something like that. So
Mm,
congratulations on your 40 episodes, and I do enjoy
we made
Thank
it.
you.
listening each week or so, and you've had some really great guests on there. So please keep it going.
And some really poor ones as well, but we won't name those. Nigel Hedges.
So what's been happening? So I'm still at Monash and loving life there. So Group Chief Information Security Officer. So plenty going on at Monash. We've had I guess over the last year or two change in leadership. So it's there's been quite a few changes as happens in big organisations. So right from the top, so our Vice Chancellor, which is the equivalent of a CEO in a corporate, we've got a new one. She's fantastic. And then we've also had almost every position underneath her change in that 12 months as well. So everything from the CFO, head of HR, chief operating officer, head of IT, general counsel, risk and compliance, like the whole leadership team has changed coincidentally. So for me as a CISO, it's about sort of rebuilding those relationships and taking those groups through our strategy and our investment plan for cybersecurity. So plenty happening on that side. We've got a couple of large programs happening within the organisation, like most big organisations do. We've got some big IT transformation pieces. But as you mentioned before, Monash has a global footprint, and they've got a strategy called Impact 2030, which part of it is to have a global impact. So they continue to invest and build out, I guess, a presence across the world. So we've got a campus in Indonesia now, which opened a couple of years ago. We continue to grow in Malaysia, so we've got a Malaysian university as well. We've got two campuses in China, in mainland China as well. And we've announced in the last few weeks our Prado campus is officially a campus now. So we've got a campus in Italy. So we had a research centre there. It's officially a campus now. And back here in Australia, we've announced the Alfred campus as well. So we do a lot with Alfred Health, and we've got a significant presence there. So that's officially a university campus here in Melbourne as well. So they continue to expand. And I guess, one of the big projects, well, one that was named publicly recently as well, is our Maverick project. So this is a genuine AI project. So not a fluffy add-on of AI, but a genuine AI supercomputer. So it's sovereign capability we're building in Australia. So it's a $60 million investment. Not all of the details have come out just yet, as it's still under development. But me and my team have been involved from the start. So it's something that's very, very exciting. Personally, I find it very exciting. It's new technology. It's going to be a first in Australia. It will be sovereign capability. It'll be a significant platform in Australia for research. And I guess it's opened my eyes to the sort of the new technology that we need to get our head around. So, the behind the scenes type stuff of AI. So this is everything from we need new types of data centers because we need the power. We need the types of cooling. So we're doing liquid cooling these days. But things like data pre-processing, software-defined storage, and all these sorts of things that are new concepts from a technology perspective. We've now got to wrap security around them as well. So we've got to find the right people that understand that sort of cutting-edge technology, but then can understand how to secure it as well. So it's a pretty exciting project. And it's one that has a really good mission behind it. So it will be available for research. And one of the first use cases there is around early detection of cancer. So it's genuine life-changing stuff, that the outcomes there. And working for an organization like Monash, like obviously this is the IT and the cyber side of it, but we're bringing together, some fantastic academics and researchers from the Faculty of IT that know how to train these AI models, and then bringing together, fantastic medical researchers as well from those faculties to come together and use that data for good outcomes. So, some big stuff happening at Monash. It's always keeping us busy. We've got a great team that's been pretty stable. But I guess, the challenges are always big at universities, particularly in Australia. We run some very large-scale universities, very different to, say, the US and the UK models. So if you look at something like a Harvard or an Oxford, very well-known, very prestigious, very highly ranked universities, but they're probably sitting around, the 25,000 students in Australia. So if you look at Monash, we're probably 5 times that size. So we're 90,000 students, very large from a student point of view. And when you look at the infrastructure, we're sitting at something like 200 to 250,000 active user accounts, for 400 to 500,000 devices on our networks. And even if you just look at the human side, like one of our big campuses, when it's busy, like start of semester and exams and those sorts of things, a single campus will have 50 to 60,000 people on it. So it's a small city in its own. And so trying to secure that and sort of balance that with universities that are open and collaborative while doing sensitive and medical research, it's a challenge. But genuinely, privacy, security, and I guess confidentiality is front of mind, and we see it from our researchers, we see it from our executives. So it does make it a bit easier when you don't have to sort of have that fight.
So you've been pretty quiet by the sound of it. Not much on.
Yeah, just twiddling our thumbs, Jason.
Yeah. So, and then I've asked you to join into the fund we're doing, that $100 million fund up in Queensland as well, just in your spare time. So
Yeah.
I don't know how you get exercise and sleep in, or anything else.
No, we'll do that.
Crazy.
We'll do that later in life, mate.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, there's a few things sort of to sort of unpack there, and I think, and also, and you and I sort of, and I've got a group of mates as well, sort of on the crypto sort of thing as well. Like we're sort of talking about a broad range of things, and we can sort of unpack this a bit later as well. But I was trying to think what the price of crypto would have been when we were first sort of talking about that. It would have been, in the low thousands, I'm guessing. Was it single digit thousands, do you reckon, when we were sort of first
yeah,
back then, or
maybe 10 or
maybe
20 if we're talking
Yeah.
US dollars, Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
On the spot, but yeah.
And now it's over 100 now. So anyone that followed your advice back then, they'd be pretty happy if they're still sitting on it. But a lot of stuff we spoke about then too was the security stuff. So and we talk a lot about on security here, and if we're looking at the sort of the macro micro things, it's interesting if we talk about, and the Trump government being sort of very pro, sort of crypto and stuff like that. The change has been massive in that time. When we're talking about over a year in what you've done there, but in the crypto space, what's happened there has been probably even bigger, arguably, if you think about the rate of return and everything like that, but also from the security and everything.
Mm.
What have you noticed most, I think, from our original conversations to sort of where we're at now? I mean, it's something you keep learning about, but the core and fundamental principles are still there. Like you read like Michael Saylor's book, the Bitcoin Standard, and then look at what he's done with his business. I think he owns about 3% of Bitcoin worldwide now. With what he's been doing. What have you seen as the biggest change? I think it's being more accepted, more generally than when we first started speaking about. But what other things have you really noticed over that sort of last 3 or 4 years that have sort of caught your eye?
Yeah, so price aside, I probably won't talk about price, but I guess the change in the last 3 or 4 years, or even the last 1 or 2 years, it's around the legitimacy of those digital assets. So let's say, like in the last couple of weeks, we've seen in the US they passed the Genius Act. It's a very smart acronym there, but that's really around legitimizing and having a framework for stable coins. And adding a level of legitimacy there, and able to use that, and a bit of predictability about how the government would treat those types of assets. And I think I read yesterday or day before that Spotify, for example, has now added in the USDC, so one of the popular stable coins, as an accepted use, so you can accept that, online. So again, adding another level of legitimacy. But I guess a couple of things that I think added probably the most legitimacy in Australia was around ETFs. So we've seen now an ETF for Bitcoin, for Ethereum. I think in the next few days we're expecting one for Solana. But also things like, we've got ASX listed ones around crypto innovators, for example. So the sort of the picks and axes of the world. So the miners and the infrastructure behind the scenes. So having institutional investors being able to invest from that perspective, and getting access to those assets. And with Ethereum and things like that, getting access to staking rewards and those sorts of things. So there's a lot, I guess, like a lot of frameworks and a lot of legislation that's now in place, and that's the big difference I reckon I've seen in the last, 1, 2, 3 years. Yeah.
And also, there is a case here with regard to the tax treatment as well. Well, I think there'll be a decision further on, but that'll be interesting to watch as well with regard to
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah, I do
taxation.
think. Yeah, I think Australia has gone very quiet on how they're regulating
Mm,
digital assets. I think that maybe potentially a bit of a lost opportunity, or maybe we can play a bit of
mm.
catch up. But I think Thailand.
If you're buying to hold, I don't think it's really an issue. I think
Mm.
it's the people trading it, that are people trying to get in and out of it. I think the way I've been treating it always is been try and buy and hold, right? Like is the my method. So I don't worry too much about the ups and downs of it all. Like it got down to 75 US, about a month or so ago when Trump started doing the tariffs and everything like that. But it has that up and down. It's a good test of your own mental fortitude too, with how it's a good mirror of how strong people are on their investment strategy and what they're trying to do there. But
Yeah, I think some of
yeah,
the
look,
like we've seen. I think in the last few weeks, I think like Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, they've all come out with tax incentives and a bit of clarity around how they treat digital assets, but also back to your point around startups and supporting startups and that sort of that ecosystem as well. So a bit more clarity. So I think a few other countries are a bit more on the front foot in terms of providing that clarity as well. Um, and I guess, the other aspect to it as well is now that, and you and I have spoken about this previously around the real world assets as well. So there's
mm,
probably a few aspects to this, but tokenizing of real world assets,
yeah,
real estate and art seem to be very popular. So,
massive, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I've got a friend actually who's overseas. He's looking at an apartment. It's like just $1 million over in Europe, and pretty much he can put up 500,000 of his Bitcoin as security. This is with a Swiss bank, and that he holds the coin still. That's the security for half of that loan. The other half he's getting lent at 1.45%. So, he's living in a $1 million apartment for about $1,000 a month, so he still gets the upside of having the crypto obviously sitting there, and they're lending him the balance of that, so there's a lot more happening in that as being seen as real security against real assets as well, so
And I think
there,
I think
there is there is a big shift.
it adds a level of accessibility for people as well. So if you're tokenizing a property, you can have fractional ownership. It's pretty straightforward. It's all on the blockchain, and it means you might not be able to afford a whole property, but you could afford a partial part of that. Or same with art if you want to invest in art. So
Mm.
of course, there's
Yeah, I
other
think that'd
ways
be
to
good
do
for
it
kids,
that are
because
not
we're saying
digital.
the kids are finding it hard to get into property or hard to do that. That this is something that you could do as a collective and actually get people into the market if they wanted to, a place to live basically, and having something as security. So it's good that it's being recognised, now, or being seen as something that
And I think
is
it
a
flips
legitimate
the
asset
other
to.
way as well. So if we
Mm,
look at some of the treasuries, I guess if you look at some of the stable coins, so when something's minted on chain as worth $1, it's got to be they've got to have the collateral behind the scenes, right? Whether that's a US dollar, piece of gold, whatever it is, but also seeing bonds and things like that, and real estate actually being in the treasuries of some of these stable coins as well. So it's sort of flipping the other way, that they are the collateral, the real world assets, and then they're issuing stable coins as part of
Yeah, I'm glad I collected all that gold when we had the gold mine, because back in the early 2000s we were getting, like, just, and it's amazing how heavy they are. Like when you get an ounce of gold and you put it in your hand, how heavy it is now. But
it.
I'm glad I won't tell Tom where I'm hiding
So I
that,
think,
but
yeah. So I think there
we'll have a
is
story on that.
there is some. Is it Ainsley in Perth that are doing tokenization
Mm,
of gold as well? So again, you
yep.
have fractional
Yeah.
ownership of gold. It's all tracked on chain, and that is,
Yeah.
of course, the physical asset is held somewhere one to one as well.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned AI sort of before. Sorry, so I'll let you jump in a sec. But I just want to go back on the AI stuff, because we were all at RSA together and we sort of wandered the floor a bit. And Tom and I were talking about the agentic AI stuff that was sort of everywhere, right? And it was really just Chat GPT wrappers, basically left, right, and center. Did you see anything? We've sort of asked a few, because Nigel had been over there and a few others. Did you see anything that sort of really caught your eye this year, or something where you go, wow, that's something different, or I'd really like to explore that a bit further? Because to us, it just seemed like it was same old, and everyone just throwing AI up on a banner or something like that. But no, it didn't. Especially from the year prior, it didn't look like there was anyone really innovative or being different to what we'd sort of seen prior. But what was your experience? What did you see, or anything you could sort of give to the viewers or listeners on
Yeah,
on
I
that front?
generally agree with you. There probably wasn't a lot of genuine use cases for AI. I
Mm,
did notice that another acronym that became popular, which was the non-human identities, and there seems to
mm,
be a lot of booths starting to push that. Which I guess that is genuinely, we need to think about it if we're doing agentic
yeah.
AI. But I probably enjoyed the startup area the best. So
Mm.
upstairs there
Yeah,
at
that's been good. I
RSA.
think that's been, and a lot of people don't find it, do they? Because that being upstairs and stuff like that, I think because we knew like a Vertra and some of the other people that we sort of knew up there, that's what drew us to sort of go and check it out. But I agree that there is some. Last year there was some good stuff with Seal Security and others, like that are sort of up there, and you find some sort of hidden gems up there, don't you?
Yeah, so yeah, I agree, and so I did see the Australians up there, but yeah,
Mm.
we're following up with three of those startups
Wow.
at the
Okay. Good.
moment. So I think there's probably some genuine use cases around SOC automation through AI,
Mm,
and some smarts there to sort of reduce the human element of it. Like I say to my team, our team's generally not going to get bigger. We can't just keep throwing humans at this problem. So we need
mm,
to get smarter, whether that's through automation, whether automation uses AI, or it's just sort of old school automation. But we do need
mm.
a bit smarter around this stuff, because everything's getting faster, everything's getting more complex, and we can't just keep throwing humans at it. Like it's not scalable.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump back into the Bitcoin conversation a little bit, and I think it's really interesting. I remember in 2010, I went with one of our prime ministers when I was SPS to the Mint, and there were these giant, big boxes full of $100 million of $2 coins, $1 coins. I think back to 2015, I was still carrying coins, and now we're all just really just touching and swiping our cards everywhere. So we've shifted our behaviors into an electronic purchasing. So how much, Bitcoin is still seen as very niche, or, these kind of things. what kind of signals do you think we'll be seeing over the next few years as it starts to become more diverse? Are we really waiting for the governments to get on top of it, or with kind of like businesses and global companies being borderless in their approach? Is there just going to be a tipping point, do you think?
I think they'll continue to coexist. I don't think
Mm.
Bitcoin or digital assets are going to overtake. Well, they might overtake cash because it's generally just starting to disappear, but overtake traditional finance. I think they'll coexist. They've each got their own use cases. And that example before of Shopify, for example, it's accepting traditional currency, but it's also starting to accept digital currency as well. So I think that's probably more where it's heading, and I think there'll just be a lot more lobbying around getting some clarity on how there's tax treatment, how the government approaches it from different agencies. But I think that's probably more what we need is just the clarity, and that's starting to happen now more in the US. Again, like we saw, I think it was Amazon and a couple of others now even talking about creating their
Mm.
own stable coins. So some of these big
Yep.
retailers as well. Not so sure about that, but of course, governments want to do central bank digital currencies as well. So I think again, I think there'll be this coexistence for at least our lifetime. I don't think one's going to wipe out the other, but I think just as the crypto adoption is very high in the younger generations, and I think just naturally, as they're more comfortable with it, it will just become more popular over the coming decades.
Yeah, I think that's what you got to do is educate yourself. And I think when we started that first series, Dan and I back 4 years ago were getting a lot of questions about it. So we thought we'd put it out there about Web3, about blockchain, about cryptocurrency, and it's still, if we're sort of looking here now 4 years later, the knowledge base is still fairly low. Like a lot of people just really haven't looked into it. And there is so much that we can use application wise, especially in cybersecurity. I think that's where I think that nexus is where we see that crossover is that there's a lot of stuff that comes up from that we could actually really use and utilize in cybersecurity that we're not. I think we're still using a lot of old school techniques, AI aside for a sec, that are still not solving the problem. The password issues is still a password issue, and that comes up every time we have the dynamic standards about the SMB 1001 or something like that. There's still so many vexing issues that are just not getting solved, and I think we can use and learn a lot of this stuff. And it's interesting off the top, Dan. You mentioned about the AI stuff, and what we want to do with this fund is build, cyber AI, and quantum type stuff. So we need to look a bit more broadly, and where can we copy from other areas and sort of copy and paste that over into what we need to do, because I still think we're trying to solve the same problems with the same mindsets and the same solutions that we always have, and it's just not getting us anywhere, and we're sort of, I think, in a lot of ways going backwards fairly quickly, especially with AI now in the picture. What do you think, Dan?
I think there's definitely use cases for AI, but I think we've got to be careful as well. The shiny new thing isn't always the answer. So we've seen that with blockchain, we've seen that with the metaverse, we've seen that now coming with AI. It's like, hang on, that's this. Let's take a look at what we actually need here, and it might be something a bit.
I think AI will be different to the others, though. Yeah, I think blockchain and all those other ones, and there was it was sort of a hot minute sort of stuff, but I think with the investment and everyone who's playing at this AI level and all the major companies and everything else that's happening there, I don't see this being a fly by night, but it's really about, in some ways, it's escaped out into out of the paddocks now, and it's out in the open, and we need to sort of probably try and put, in some ways, some guardrails around it and sort of utilize where it's going to be beneficial or not. But you're seeing a lot of people, as it keeps evolving, actually, a lot of jobs are going out. I've seen some of the stuff that people are doing in video, with the VO3 stuff even. Like if you're an advertising agency, there's no chance. Have you seen the guy that does the Bigfoot ones? Like he's done these Bigfoot, like,
and the
Bigfoot,
Stormtrooper
found me where I
vlogs.
am. Yeah, they're getting 2-3 million views on these sorts of things. So if you've got a company and you want to promote your business or something like that, what you can create now, like digital agencies would be screwing themselves. Like
that's
same with legal, same with
right?
accounting,
from a couple of years ago.
all those things. Yeah, massive. Like you can really create, cinema style stuff now. There was someone did a funny one, like on the Titanic, right? Oh, I'm on the Titanic, like so excited, I get to go on the first trip, and then okay, so the ship's going down now. Like, oh, I'm a life raft, and He's got like women and children first. No, I'm getting through. Yeah, those influencers sort of film themselves, but it looks so realistic. Like it's unbelievable how good this stuff is getting, right?
Yeah,
So
and it is
I think
it's a bit scary, right? In terms of
the fake news stuff's going to go bananas now.
well,
Yeah.
you've selected a career, you've gone and trained, whether that's uni or elsewhere or
Mm.
self-taught. You're expecting to undertake this career for the next 10, 20 years. And then, within a year or
Gone.
two, you need to be able to adapt. And, the stuff that you were taking weeks and weeks to create is now, like you say, with a couple of prompts is now, we can
Yeah.
create maybe, a Super Bowl ad was created using, those sorts of tools. It's,
Correct. Yeah, and
it's
besides
really
something like
changing really
maybe
quickly.
plumbing or electrical or something like that, where you're actually got a trade where and maybe eventually, but I've already seen it with bricklaying and stuff like AI actually doing bricklaying and stuff like that. But there's certain trades that will be a bit behind. But legal, real estate, accounting, all those sorts of ones. It's moving so quickly and actually picking up these tasks so quickly that you really, from cyber, from our point of view, how do you protect against that one? But then, as you say, secondly, if you've got a kid who's going to university, what are you going to get them to study?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had a really interesting chat last week with the head of a production company based out in Ukraine. I just ended up connecting over LinkedIn, and he was telling me an amazing story. They've basically created ads in AI. And sold them to Australian businesses. So one of them was that they had a line coming into an office, and that this company was selling soundproof office booths. So it's roaring, and then it goes in. You could not tell the difference. And he was giving a behind-the-scenes snapshot of how that actually goes. And we spoke to Vanessa Van Beck recently at Fortescue. They've got an incredible savings target across that business using AI. It's all over the place. And mining is an early adopter. And this is just coming back to RSA. So last year it was all about agents. This year it was all about agentic. And it does seem to be the hype is talking a little bit in front of where it is. But when I come back and speak to marketing professionals, I did a keynote at ANZ Marketing about AI. I asked a few questions. How many people are recording all the meetings you're going into and using the transcripts to kind of get information? Almost no hands went up. So while it's being used, it's kind of piecemeal. And I actually think, as much as in cybersecurity, it kind of seems like it's pushing a little far ahead of the hype. It's actually one of the places, as well as research and things like that, where this mass data analysis is changing things. So, like Vanessa was talking about, we see these products, all of a sudden, in a SOC, you're seeing a report, basically, rather than having to go in and actually extract that raw data yourself. So where do you think kind of it's going to change across Monash when this, you have your own proprietary AI as well as the research? I'm sure it'll kind of fall out in all different parts of the organization. Where do you think these changes are going to be? And what is going to be a challenge for a CISO to kind of keep on top of all of this?
But yeah, I think the challenge is being familiar with the technology and how to secure it. That's the immediate challenge, and for myself and other CISOs as well. But research intensive university like ours, it's going to be a game changer, right? Like the outcomes we can get, like genuine life changing outcomes, are fantastic. The data that can be processed, the volume of data,
and for your students, it makes homework a lot easier too, Dan. Like for your
yeah,
students, so
I've heard, yeah,
let's.
yeah. But yeah, like I think, research research has always been an area where there are huge volumes of data. We do a lot of research and a lot of clinical trials and things like that. So Monash does have a lot of data around this, and being able to crunch that, cross-reference it, it's going to be life changing. I think. More holistically, though, where you start to apply AI in the physical world, like if we look, you would have seen at RSA the Waymo self-driving cars, those sorts of things.
Had a trip, yep.
If you start to think about, that's all bubbling away in the background, at an increasing speed. If you look at the Optimuses that are coming as well, so the robots that they're targeting within the next few years to be out for $20,000 to be purchased. Once those things are smart enough and capable enough, those things will be out and about and changing the workforce. So to your point before, Jason, around bricklaying, I wouldn't be surprised if you have an Optimus for $20,000 doing bricklaying within the next 5 years. So I think once you start applying that AI in the real world with physical things, I think it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, and then Terminator. What's the next Terminator movie? They made about 4 or 5 of those, so they'll probably make
I think
6
it's
now.
just real
There's
life, real life now, I think,
yeah,
mate.
that's right. Yeah, just
With
film the
the
streets.
Just go outside,
with
yeah.
Yeah, with the Waymos, Jason and I last year at RSA, we came across one that had just literally got stuck. It got stuck behind a truck that was unloading furniture into a house. It
Furniture.
was blocking a driveway where a car was trying to exit, and we stood there for about 3 or 4 minutes. It just didn't know what to do. When I caught
Mm.
one in San Francisco this year, I was struck by the difference. It cut in front of a bus. It accelerated around. It was actually like being in with a kind of crazy taxi driver. So that, and for me, I could see the steering wheel was really in there for my mental comfort. It didn't need to be there at all. So
Mm.
I think that's another really interesting transition that we have, is that they don't need a lot of these kind of things, but we're still building the environment. It's going to be interesting with the robots, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
Mm.
Tom, I had a similar experience. I had the police pull over someone in front of me while I was in a Waymo, so I had to deal with that situation. And then another situation where there was literally a dumpster on fire in the middle of the road was San Francisco. It negotiated that.
As happens.
But
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
were very like. There's so many. I think there's more than 1,000 there now,
Mm.
right? So I
Mm.
found
Yeah.
myself in some traffic, stuck in the middle of an intersection. The Waymos were smart enough to talk to each other, and they started reversing back, like a whole line of them, right? So to get out of the
Mm.
intersection. So there are a lot of smarts between them as well.
Yeah.
Very, very clever stuff. It's kind of crazy world we're all growing into, isn't
Yeah, and Tom, I tried to hack the one Tom was in, but I couldn't even get
it?
into it. So
He had a good
just going
go.
to make that ride a bit more exciting for him. But yeah, that's. I think when we look this, and just coming back here locally, like the adoption of a lot of things is actually, well, but we've been a bit slow, like in Australia, just more generally, and we're not really getting much of a lead from up the chain, just say from larger corporates or from government. It seems to be we're sort of stuck in this status quo, or waiting a lot for what happens overseas before we make a decision on something. The government sort of it's it remained the same government. It sort of just has sort of flown through, and it seems to be just we're sort of stuck in this holding pattern at the moment. What do you think we need to? I mean, like the AUKUS thing is, up in the air at the moment. We don't know what's happening with that. It's Albanese obviously didn't get to have a chat with Trump, but he got to talk to some of the aides there. But you can bet if there's something happens over in the region with Israel and Iran, the first phone call will be made to Australia and the UK to say come over and give us some sort of assistance. But what do you see we need to do? Because I think we need to become more accountable and look after ourselves a bit rather than being sort of reliant on the big brother, especially in the region we're in. In the environment you're in, especially in university and stuff. There's a lot of smart people around there. What are you sort of hearing around the traps, or what are you seeing or feeling yourself?
I think the world's changed, and you need to be very dynamic with your partnerships. I don't think it's black and
Mm.
white anymore in terms of those days are gone. But we've got partnerships in the region. We've got partnerships around the world. Australia's got a
Mm.
very highly educated workforce and population, and Australia punches above its weight many times. Like if you look, yesterday we had the university. I'll just talk about universities for a minute.
Yeah.
The university rankings, the global rankings, like Australia
Yeah, saw that.
is really punching above
Mm.
its weight in terms of the number of universities that are in the top 50 and top 100. And on the sports field, on the technology field, we're always sort of punching above our weight. We're a fairly small population, so I think we are doing something right. Maybe it's cultural, but I think there's always. So let's look at the digital asset space. I think just clarity around how things are interpreted, just to give a bit of certainty for people to be able to make investments and to make decisions around maybe their career or the types of things they're going to do with their money as well. I think it's just around the clarity that's required.
Because I think we've got so much tied up in old school assets, whether it be property, we rely very much on, excuse me, mining, for bringing income, and then gambling's the third biggest one in this country. So you got
Oh, we're very
property, mining, gambling, right? So they're not really stuff you build an economy on, right? That's really built on a house of cards, and it just takes property to prick, or mining we don't tax as much as we should, to keep a lot of the income here and the taxation. And gambling, not exactly something you should be hanging your hat on as something that you have as a main driver of income within a country. I think we need to really fixate and focus on where we are, and it starts with the school system. We need to change the schooling system and catch up with the times, because I think we're going to be left behind if we keep trying to again do things the same way as we've always done them, which haven't exactly given us the best results, but especially in this modern time and yeah, no one's learning cybersecurity at school, or it's very, very rare. It's not part of the curriculum. We don't learn about financial literacy, or that stuff doesn't get pushed so much. So I think we need to really start at the grassroots and sort of work that back through, because I think the kids, especially after COVID, the kids are really lost. You sort of talk to kids and what do you want to be? What do you want to do? Being a social media influencer is not really a career, especially with AI coming in. So, but that's where some kids' heads are at the moment. I'm just going to become famous.
Yeah.
That's the worry, is that we're not giving something as an aspirational thing to aim for anymore. There's just not that part in the school. So I think we need to start it from the schooling system, but the government needs to take control of that. And that's not happening.
Yeah.
What did you describe recently in a great post you did, Jason? You split it into that kind of relationships, the physical health, I think it was the mental health, those kind of challenges, and trying to be balanced with all those, and it's near impossible. So I'd love just to, what are some of the things you try and do with your team, and some of the challenges that you face, kind of trying to get that best out of everyone every day, and then, keep them in an incredibly tough environment in cyber, kind of forward focused and healthy, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I can't really do anything about physical health for other people apart from encourage them. But I guess when we look internally at cyber teams, and we're not any different to any other cyber team really globally, but there's probably a few ways to break it down. If you look at like our incident responders, that they probably face a particular type of stress and workload. So I guess the way we approach that area, we've actually done some work with CyberMinds, so another Australian startup around, I guess, the mindset and some of the mental side of it, where you can help reduce that pressure. So some techniques, but probably the main thing we do there is around simulations, right? So each quarter we do a proper simulation, again with another Australian company, Retrospect Labs. Where we simulate an incident based off either something that's happening in the news, something that happened elsewhere, or maybe something that we've seen internally in our environment. And our mindset there is, if we practice, and train those muscles or mental muscles, it's going to be less stressful when the real things happen, and you just sort of kick in without having to be too stressed about it. So that, I think the incident responders are a particular type of stress, but I think more holistically, and this isn't just cyber, this is sort of IT and sort of professional roles these days, but just the mental overload of, continuous meetings, the context switching, like, 5 minutes on this, 5 minutes on this, 5 minutes on this. Many people, and probably yourselves included, you get to the end of the day and you can barely have a conversation, right? You're just mentally drained. So we recognise that, and I guess within our teams we've got a few strategies that we try to help with some of this stuff. So one of the obvious ones is to reduce meetings. So we do use a lot of tech to try and do that. So we prefer things like Slack, and we use Loom a lot as well, which is sort of a video platform, with the idea being that people can consume that whenever they want, right? So it's not urgent, it won't context switch them into that conversation. They can just pick that up whenever they're ready and whenever the time's right. And sort of just breaking out time and blocking out time for them to get on top of things, to research things, to have a deep dive, like a mental think about what they're doing and maybe the piece of work they're doing. So for example, and I try to lead by example with this, Fridays essentially no meetings unless it's ultra urgent. And they're days for doing admin. So if you get an email from me, it's most likely on a Friday, where I'll catch up on my emails, organize my calendar, feel, mentally get in the zone and feel like I'm a bit more organized. And other parts of the team would then maybe do a bit of research into a particular project they're doing, do some reading, do a bit of training, that sort of thing. So I try and block out that entire day where it's practical, and I'll try and lead by example with that. I think like the availability of hybrid working as well now is really good. So again, sort of breaking up your days. If you need to do some deep thinking, write a report, those sorts of things, probably best done at home when you're remote, as opposed to sort of the face-to-face stuff when we're in the office for the few days a week as well. But what I can encourage again is the time off as well. So I think, like, I personally find I need at least sort of 10 days to sort of completely switch off from work and reset and mentally and mentally recharge myself. And so, we encourage at work and again, I try and lead by example. When you're on leave, like, nobody contacts you. Like, we should have the resilience in the team and the load sharing within the team that you can actually switch off without taking phone calls, without taking messages. And those sorts of things. So I really encourage teams to take time off. We're very fortunate that we can buy additional leave at Monash as well. It's one of the great benefits. But I think those regular breaks, for some people, that's just like having maybe a 3 or 4 day weekend regularly, and others it might be a few 2-week blocks throughout the year. But I don't want to see people with leave built up. I think it's quite healthy to have those breaks and switch off and mentally recharge. But I guess there are a few of the things that we try and prioritise within our team.
I love that. And Jason, how about you? So you work 8 days a week, 27, 28 hours in every day. I've seen you there. You're drinking one of your health shakes. Diet's really important. How do you, and look, it's not easy being an entrepreneur and doing all these things. So what are some of the things that you do to kind of help stay on top of all this stuff, and where do you find the traps?
Yeah, I'm probably not the best person to ask. It's I wouldn't recommend doing what I do. That's the thing is that because there's always something. I think as an entrepreneur, you're always finding something to do or the next thing. And I haven't had a proper break or holiday for a long period of time, and I probably get to burnout stage and then burn out and then recover and then go again. But my burnout time, I don't even give myself much time to do that properly. So I wouldn't take any advice from me with regard to anything on that front. I think Dan's advice is much better. But I think when you run your own things, I don't know, that's something you build up as a muscle. I suppose it's almost like doing exercise where you get better and more resilient at actually being an entrepreneur from just doing it over a longer period of time. But you do have sometimes down periods, but you seem to just sort of bounce back pretty quickly because you have to. And the thing is, when you're not working at an organization where you can give yourself leave or, you got people to cover for you, it just makes that a bit more challenging. I've always tried to build every business I've been in. It's got to a point I try and build them so I can get out of it. So whether it's been like with Starwood Whiskey or, with the gold business or anything like that, you get staff so then you can actually do that. I want to get a business so good that I can just get out and I never have to be there or have any involvement in it. But yeah, when you're starting all the time or you're having different things, like we're doing this startup fund, at least I've got James and and Yaz and stuff like that, and we'll build a team around that. That won't take or be as onerous as that. But doing something like we're doing with Murphin, it's just Tom and I mainly, and then we'll get some people from the outside every now and then. But the challenge is, and the thing with all businesses, you want to try and get staff, but then staff come with their own sort of headaches as well. Sometimes like an adult daycare center, if you're not systemized enough or have it organized enough that they've got clear run things. So probably go back to Dan in that. How do you give people the autonomy? Because you've got to oversee a big team. You've got to report to CISOs and all that sort of stuff. You compartmentalize pretty well, I think, and you actually have a great skill of actually being able to relate with all different people across the team. How do you do it that you give that autonomy to someone and keep those report lines clear enough so everyone knows what they're going to do and don't overload yourself?
Yeah, I've always said the role of a CISO or a role of any leader is really just to set the vision and then help clear the roadblocks so the team can deliver, right? So you're right. A lot of my role is admin. So it is as the team grow, the finance side grows, the HR side grows, and that is honestly a large part of my job. But I think that with time, I've learned to delegate and genuinely delegate. So you trust someone to go and do something. They might not do it to 100% of how you do it, but you need to sort of mentally hand that over to them, delegate that to them. But then that's a task that, again, when you go on leave, someone's going to take care of it. So it's an opportunity for them to build themselves, to grow themselves, but it also frees me up and means that I can take a break as well. So I think that that delegation is a skill that probably took me a couple of decades to learn to genuinely do that.
But I think for me too, the other thing is I get to a point where I just have to cut things out because I take too much on.
Yeah.
And I take too much responsibility for a lot of things. And so, like, at the moment, I've come off the Box Hill committee, wrapping up the ACN stuff. There comes a point where you can only do so much as well. And I think I don't think I know I was doing too much, but it's also with relationships and stuff like that too. Like you sometimes, that was the islands that I sort of talk about. You got the island of health, you've got an island of, sort of relationships, you have an island of business. And what I was sort of saying is that those islands, health's one you sort of have control of, unless you get really sick or something like that. But without health, you don't have anything else. Firstly, right? So there's no use being the richest person in the graveyard. That's going to be no use to anyone. Having this big pile of something when you're gone, it's useless, right? So that's key, I think, and I think that's a main driver that I always try and look after as best I can, because I have some modicum of control there. With business and with your relationships, if you got business not going so well and you've got great relationships or a relationship that you can go back to, that's always great. That you could say, well, at least I've got the solace there, right? Or if the relationship's not going so well, some people bury themselves into business. You have something there, but when a lot of those aren't working well, or you go through a period like that, you sometimes have to restock. And I do it because my birthday's at the end of the year, and obviously coming up at the end of the year, I'll do a stock take then. But I've started doing one in the middle of the year too, and it was like, what's not fulfilling me, or what's not realistic, or what do I have to just cut to basically say that I've got. So by June 30 this year, I say I've got to cut certain things out to actually move forward. So it's doing that mid-year stock take, because it's too long leaving it. But I do writing every week, so I have a session every Thursday with someone that I talk through stuff, and on Saturday nights, since I stopped drinking, Saturday nights I can write, and I write stuff out and actually get quite deep with myself and actually honest with myself about stuff, and it's not comfortable. And I think I was masking a lot of stuff, I think, by having a drink or something like that to distract me or take me away or sort of numb or anesthetize myself in some way, shape or form. That now that's gone, it's actually, I've got in touch with myself, or the gut feel and all those sorts of things make a big difference. It's not comfortable, but I'm getting comfortable with the fact of getting really uncomfortable about myself and actually really putting it and holding a mirror up to myself. And some people don't like that, when you give the honesty about this relationship's not working or whatever the case may be, it sometimes gets taken as a personal affront or that it's them. But it's actually, man, I've got to be realistic with myself. I think from a young age, growing up with a single mum and stuff, and being the man of the house from, sort of year 7 onwards, I was so reliant on that I've got to protect other people, I've got to look after other people. And, but then who's look after me? I just found that I wasn't getting looked after myself. And if I collapsed like I did in 2017, I was a rock for everyone else. No one else knew how to deal with it. It's like, oh, he's crashed. He's the guy that fixes everything. What are we supposed to do? Sort of thing. So it's hard, but you sometimes just got to go and do an audit or a stock take of your life and go, what do I need to clear out, to be the best for me? I've got 3, or 2 people on the call here that, I'm very honest with, or have, deep conversations with. And you need that as well. You need those sort of people that you can actually have those conversations with, and it actually is taken well. But, sometimes people don't have your best interest at heart, and they're just using you or just trying to take stuff from you or sucking from you. And you got to say no more, or just cut that off, and that's, I think, the balance, I think, for the other side, from my point of view, of where you need to really take stock and be strong and just, and be direct. And it's,
I think
not always good, but I used to be like a volcano and just explode, rather than offload it,
I think if you're that stretched as well, like if you try and do everything, you end up doing nothing, right? It's
correct. Yeah.
I think, like, if you apply the team lens over that's part of leadership, is to around that vision is, what are the priorities? What are the immediate priorities? We can't do everything as a team. Personally, I can't do everything either. And so what do I want to do? And this is probably some of the stuff you write about. What do I want to do this week, this month, this year type thing. Yes, we'll get to other things, but they're not going to happen until, next year or whatever it is. So I think if you try and do everything and you're just so stretched, you end up getting nothing done. But you're right, there are some foundations there around health, physical health, mental health, your friendships and your partnerships and things like that as well. I think they're the foundations, and you're not going to do well professionally if those all aren't fairly stable.
No, and that's it. And thank you for all the stuff. Like we, obviously not talking the pot about, but we have a lot of great conversations on the side, and I've known you're always someone I can go to, for a chat or to get advice on. So I appreciate that.
I think that's a really powerful place to kind of wrap this up. Thank you both for being so honest about that. So it's a subject, and talking about it is key. And look, for me, I think whenever I really run into that brick wall, I always love that Marcus Aurelius, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. And it just kind of allows you to narrow the focus to really what's in front of you. Look, thanks, Dan. That was a great conversation, diving into what's happening at Monash around the AI. I love the Bitcoin chat right through to the mental health stuff. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you guys have a great day after kind of getting a lot of this stuff off our chest.
Thanks, Tommy. Thanks, Dan, again. And we're episode 3, what, episode 82?
Yep, absolutely. Coming soon.